When Moses made the serpent of brass on a pole, what did it represent? Does it have any symbology to Christ on the cross? Is Satan an angel? Can he still enter into people today? Is he bound? Is he a king? How can we know if we're acting as direct agents for his purposes? I want to know.
I want to welcome each and every one of you to this week's episode of the Doctrine of Christ, and I am so glad to do that because whether you know it or not, the doctrine of Christ is the most important thing in your life.
Good to be back. Good to see you.
Well,
And looking forward to seeing what the Father's put on your heart tonight.
let's get to work.
All right.
The episode for this evening is the Doctrine of Christ on Satan. And I want to begin with Numbers chapter 21, verses 8 and 9. And this is an Old Testament passage that Jesus quoted to give us some real insight into the nature of Satan, what he is and what he is like. And in Numbers chapter 21 in verse 8, and the Lord said unto Moses, make thee a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole, and it shall come to pass that every one that is bitten, when he looketh upon it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass, and put it upon a pole. And it came to pass that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he beheld the serpent of brass, he lived. Now, all we need is a Strong's Concordance, and we can really learn something here. If you look up the word fiery serpent in verse 8, that is Strong's number 8314. That is the word seraph, that is translated seraphim. And if you look up the word translated the serpent of brass in verse 9, it's Strong's number 5175. That is the word nakash, which is, and nakash, it's the hiss sound that a serpent makes. We're talking about a crawly snake. So when the Lord told Moses to make a seraphim and put it on a pole, he made a crawly snake and put it on the pole. Now, why did Moses do that? Well, there's some keen insight into what Satan is here, because in Genesis chapter 3 and verse 14, and by the way, Moses wrote Genesis and Numbers, so he knew, and it says in Genesis 3:14, and the Lord God said unto the serpent, because thou hast done this, thou art cursed above all cattle, and above every beast of the field. Upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. And the serpent is the sign of the seraphim cursed. And when Moses held up that hissy snake, made the bronze hissy snake and held it up, this is the sign of Satan cursed. And this is the very text that Jesus referred to in John chapter 3 and verse 14 and 15. And Jesus referred to this story, and he likened it unto his victory on Calvary. And in John chapter 3, verses 14 and 15, and as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up. And Moses lifted up the sign of the seraphim cursed. And that is the cursing and the defeating of Satan. Jesus lifted up upon the cross. And when those that were snake bit looked upon the brass serpent, they were healed and were all snake bit with the deadly poison of sin. And if we'll just look to Christ, we will be healed. And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have eternal life. From this text, we learn something very important, that Satan technically is not an angel. When you talk about seraphim, cherubim, Ophanim, these are higher order of celestial beings. And a lot of people, there's angels and devils and that's it. but it's much more complicated than that. We're going to read text where it says that Satan has a kingdom, and there's a pecking order in that kingdom. He's the big guy, and there are a lot of others, celestial entities, that are involved there. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, beginning in verse 13, it compares the ability of ministers to fool people into thinking they're real preachers with Satan's ability to make people think he's an angel of light. And in 2 Corinthians 11:13, it says, "For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. He is not an angel of light or even an angel, but he can make people think that he is, just like people that don't even know the Lord can convince people that they're really something special.
Yeah.
Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works." While we're in the neighborhood back here, I want to read Numbers 23:23, and this is one of my favorite scriptures. And I know that there are people that are actively trying to curse us, and I know that there are people. We've even found some stuff on the grounds of the barn here. You know, there's definitely
already.
People. Oh yeah, and so we know that they are, and we really have to. I've really taken my prayer game up a notch or two this week to where I really feel like I'm on top of it. There's no doors or nothing that's going to get a wedge, but the enemy's coming. But Numbers 23:23, "Surely there is no enchantment against Jacob, neither is there any divination against Israel. According to this time it shall be said of Jacob and of Israel, what hath God wrought?" And as long as we keep our faith in the cross is what cursed Satan. And when our faith is there, we're the Israel of God. There's no enchantment can touch us. But that doesn't mean that we can be lackadaisical and let down our guard, because we can feel the effects of it. But we have to be proactive in our prayer life. We've got to be aggressive. And anybody that is living for the Lord, you're going to be a target. So I just wanted to make mention of that. And one thing about Satan, he, as a higher order of celestial being, he is able to enter into people. He is able to actually possess a human being. And this is something that he has done. And in this aspect, we understand how Satan is bound. Satan now is prevented from entering into human beings. But when he is cast back in, he will be able to do that. Right now, certainly, our nation and every other nation, ungodly people are in charge. But when Satan is cast back down, he's going to be driving the car. And it's going to go to a whole new level. And the Bible speaks of him gathering the nations unto Armageddon. And in the Gospels, we see this. And when I believe that in history, we can see Antiochus Epiphanes, I believe Satan entered into him, and he was such a maniac, and so was Nero and Hitler. And when Satan enters into somebody, big things happen. And Satan entered into Judas, and Jesus was betrayed. And in Luke chapter 22 and verse 3, "Then entered Satan into Judas, surnamed Iscariot, being of the number of the 12. And this is, and you know, Judas was transformed. Jesus knew, but the others that were with Judas all the time, they couldn't spot him that there was anything wrong. And this is how good these guys are. Yeah. You really have to be discerning. You really have to get to know someone. You can't know someone from just listen to someone on YouTube. You have to be around them. You have to, and you know, you can't, when someone has a mask on, you cannot know the person because you have to be able to look into someone's face and know them, you know. but which is another whole issue. But in John chapter 13 and verse 2, and supper being ended, the devil having now put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him. Satan is going to take things to a new level very soon, and we're going to look at some texts there that are going to talk about some things that will soon happen. Now, in the Gospel of Matthew, let's turn to chapter 16 and verse 21. And we're going to look at how we spot Satan. And you see, you got to see Satan coming, because Satan is like deadly nerve gas. And if you get to the place where he gets so close that you smell it, you're dead. And you've got to see him coming and be able to identify him. And in Matthew chapter 16, let's begin about verse 21. From that time forth began Jesus to shew unto his disciples how that he must go into Jerusalem and suffer many things of the elders and chief priests and scribes, and be killed and be raised again the third day. This is the true Messiah. The true Messiah would suffer and die upon the cross for the sins of mankind. That is not what the Jews wanted. Right. They wanted someone to be a physical king, and this is the dispensational Messiah and the rabbinic Messiah. They wanted that king that would deliver them from the yoke of Roman bondage. And look what Peter said. Peter was like this still. Then Peter took him and began to rebuke him, saying, Be it far from thee, Lord, this shall not be unto thee. But he turned and said unto Peter, Get thee behind me, Satan. And Peter was being used directly by Satan. And the rest of the verse tells us how to spot it. Thou art an offense unto me, for thou savorest not the things that be of God, but those that be of men. And whenever someone exalts the things of men over the things of God, they are operating under the direct influence of Satan. And we've done a lot of shows about the doctrine of Christ, how that over and over the Bible says that the doctrine of Christ isn't something optional that you can choose to believe or not believe. We've read 2 John 9 many times, and we can't read it enough. Whosoever transgresseth and abideth not in the doctrine of Christ hath not God. And when you're coming against the doctrine of Christ and exalting the things of men over the things of God, you are a direct agent of Satan. And we want to put that in ways that make us feel more comfortable. Well, he doesn't understand. He just doesn't know all the excuses we make. Satan is directly using that person. Whenever an individual comes against the things of Christ with the things of men, that's Satan. And we don't want to in any way sugarcoat it. But the word's clear. Whosoever transgresseth and abideth not in the doctrine of Christ hath not God. He that abideth in the doctrine of Christ, he hath both, the Father and the Son. Now, in the Gospel of John, chapter 12, we talked about this in our DLCs on the millennial reign. And what Jesus said is very clear here. Now is the judgment of this world. Now shall the prince of this world be cast out. At the cross, Satan was cursed, and he was cast out of the first heaven. Thank God he can no longer enter into another human being. And at this time, he will inhabit personally the beast of Revelation 13.
Yeah.
And that's when, it's going to go to a whole new level real quick.
Yeah. I got a feeling that's sooner rather than later.
I really believe that, Jimmy. I really will be happy to be wrong about that, but things are happening so fast. We're really on a downhill slide on a very, very rapid pace. And I know that our listeners are very aware, very intelligent, and they know what's happening. And the mass of the people that are going to church every Sunday. Millions are being told that, yeah, it's bad, but we're going to be raptured before it gets real bad. And you don't really have to worry about obeying God, because that's the old stuff. A guy the other day, someone was bringing up that, the 10 Commandments might still all be good, even the fourth one. And that's the old stuff, and it doesn't even register in their mind, working out their own salvation with fear and trembling. And it grieves my heart, the things that are coming, and people are so unprepared. They think they're taking the best shot the devil has right now. And that is so wrong. That is so wrong.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was just talking about some of the things that are going on and how some of this, it may not be the mark of the beast yet, but if it gets to where you can't do stuff unless you do it, even if it's not the mark, that's enough of a mark for me to just avoid it.
Yeah.
And this person said to me, well, it can't be the mark because that ain't going to happen, basically while we're here.
Yeah.
So I knew what they were referring to, and I'm like,
yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying. A lot of people believe that, so they're not preparing.
They really do. They have no sense of urgency to obey God and be in obedience. They have no desire to prepare or position themselves to live independent of the world. And it's really, they're just savoring the things of men rather than the things of God. And this is Satan. And those doctrines, we've unpacked those, and we've showed how they just directly contradict Christ. Yeah. Jesus says one thing, Jesus says the tares before the wheat. Well, they say the wheat before the tares. They just absolutely reverse it. That's Satan. That is Satan lifting up the things of men over the things of God. Yeah. And that's why we want to warn just as many people as we can. And we're so thankful that people are just coming back to what Jesus said. And we'll trust him rather than anyone else. And that's when good things really start to happen.
That's right.
And that's what we want to do. We want to take people, and we just want to lay them at the feet of Jesus and let him take them. Revelation chapter 12 and verse 9. And the great dragon was cast out. Now, in this text, we see the names of Satan listed. And what is not in this list is Lucifer.
And you went there.
Is one of the main names of Satan. This would be a great place to put it in.
It was a great opportunity to mention his name there.
And he's not the anointed cherub in Ezekiel 28. And this is another one of the biggest deceptions of Satan, to cloak people from understanding how his kingdom operates, because specific prayers will get specific answers. And it lists them, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. Now, those are the legitimate names for Satan in Scripture, and Lucifer isn't there, which deceiveth the whole world, and he was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, Now is come salvation and strength, and the kingdom of our God, and the power of his Christ, for the accuser of our brethren is cast down, which accused them before our God day and night. This refers to a text in the Old Testament I think most people are familiar with. In the book of Job, we see Satan functioning as the accuser. Mm-hmm. Job chapter 1 verse 6 says, Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. Now, there are people that will say that Satan has already been cast into the earth, and that he's no longer the accuser of the brethren. Every born-again child of God knows better than that. Every child of God that's truly born again, they know what it is to have Satan accuse them and drag up their past, their old sins. Every child of God knows better than that. Mm-hmm. They can prove experientially that this is a lie. That which people say that, oh, Satan's already cast back in. He absolutely is not. He still is making accusation against us in the third heaven. He is bound from entering into the first, and we can prove that scripturally too. In Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, there's a phrase in the Greek that appears repeatedly through the book of Ephesians, and we've talked about this, I think, before also. And it's translated in high places or in heavenly places. In Ephesians 1 and 20, you can see this scripture, and since I mentioned it, I'll just read Ephesians 1 and 20. And Ephesians 1 and 20 says, which he wrought in Christ when he raised him from the dead and set him at his own right hand in the heavenly places. And that is the same Greek word that is translated in Ephesians 6 and 12 as high places, right at the right hand of the Father. That's where we wrestle, because we can now go before the throne and we can actually have something to say about those dark powers that are accusing us before the Father. We have a great advantage that Job did not have. In Ephesians 6 and 12, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places, right at that right hand of God. That's where we wrestle. We wrestle right there. And every child of God knows that the accuser is still at work because they can feel him in their life.
So imagine if a believer doesn't understand how to get to the right hand of God to wrestle against these powers. Maybe that's why a lot of us struggle with so many things.
Yeah, and people aren't taught that. And I noticed, I think, that the manifestation of Christ, I think, from season 1 has just uploaded to the underground church. And I remember
Saturday.
We talked about that on that episode, and we have repeatedly, because we have to know how to enter into the secret place of the Most High, to hide ourselves in that secret place. We've got to know that. And that is it's just so important.
Yeah.
And let's look at Jesus reveal Satan.
Okay.
And let's go to John chapter 10, verse 10. And of course, we recognize Satan, even though he is now bound from entering into the first heaven, he still is the commander-in-chief of the powers of darkness. And a lot of people, they say, well, if he's not here, how can he run things? Well, Jesus is here through the Holy Spirit, but he's at the right hand of the Father. And he is the head of the church at the right hand of the Father. And in the same way, Satan is the head of the satanic kingdom, even though he cannot enter into the first heaven at this time. He still is running the show. And John 10:10, the thief cometh not, but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Every doctrine of Satan is to rob some truth of God from you. And every lie of the evil one, it's to keep you in the dark about the truth of God that's going to bless you and give you spiritual life. And let's go on a little excursion of Jesus doing battle with the people of Satan. And let's start in John chapter 7 and verse 1. And this is so intense. We've read and we've talked about in Matthew chapter 12, and we're going to read a text there before we're done, where the Pharisees come up and they accuse Jesus of casting out devils by Beelzebub. And he talked to them about blaspheming the Holy Ghost. And it was so intense. Let's just try to see if we can feel the intensity. Let's go a little bit through John chapter 7 and 8. In verse 1, it says, after these things, Jesus walked in Galilee, for he would not walk in Jewry, because the Jews sought to kill him. It was so intense at this point that he couldn't even show his face, and they would have killed him.
Wow.
And in the encounter that follows in verse 13, it talks about the tremendous intimidation that came from the Jews. Howbeit no man spake openly of him for fear of the Jews.
Is it because they would cast you out of the synagogue, right? They wouldn't let you back in, and that was really important, right, to people back then.
Let's look at John chapter 12, and we see that stated explicitly. John chapter 12 and verse 42. Nevertheless, among the chief rulers also many believed on him, but because of the Pharisees they did not confess him, lest they should be put out of the synagogue. And this is the same thing that the media, which is controlled by many people that are Jewish, that's just a fact, right now, and we are so aware of this. John Hall is in YouTube jail, and my YouTube channel's gone, and Dan Badandi, I think he's back now, but it's very common, and now they want you to be afraid. It's for fear of the powers of be it YouTube, that you're afraid to say this, afraid to say that. You can't openly say you're not going to take the jab, or they're going to, they'll do this to you, that to you.
Be careful now, don't get my channel shut down.
Yeah, I know, and it's hard, because you just gotta be able to say it like it is, and because people need to hear a little truth every once in a while, and without fear, and just let them do what they want. And here's how, and I listened to I call her the crazy lady on cable, and she was talking about how people that won't get the jab, that they should be guilty of reckless endangerment, a felony, and be charged with a felony.
Wow.
And it's starting. And well, of course, I know I'm not saying anything anyone doesn't know, but there's hatred. They hate people that won't conform. And this is the hatred we feel in this encounter. Now, let's just go a little bit farther. In John chapter 7 and verse 20, the people answered and said, "Thou hast a devil. Who goeth about to kill thee?" Could you imagine getting in the face of the Son of God and telling him that you've got a devil? Can you imagine that? And with the intensity here, it's so tense that Jesus, we all know there's certain places in these big cities you just don't walk after dark. And Jesus, he would have been killed. They would have killed him on sight. And now they have an encounter. They're in his face. You've got a devil. Can you imagine looking in the eyes of the Son of God and telling me as a devil? And the intensity here is just off the chart. And let's go over to John chapter 8 and verse 37. And through John chapter 7 and John chapter 8, there's just a tremendously intense confrontation. In John chapter 8 and verse 37, I know that ye are Abraham's seed, but ye seek to kill me, because my word hath no place in you. And we've become so aware that there are so many people that say they're Christians, and the doctrine of Christ, they don't have any room for it, because the doctrine of Christ would not fit with that which they're espousing. Mm-hmm. And this is nothing but the direct working of Satan. It's like King Kong versus Godzilla. This is the things of God versus the things of men, and one's going to win. There's no the big lizard or the big ape one is going to win, and this is what we got, and we need to see it clearly. Attacks upon the doctrine of Christ. This is the direct agency of Satan. And he wants everyone to believe the things of men instead of the things of God. And this is where we all have to understand, when we choose to believe Christ, you're going to go a different road.
Yeah.
You're going to be hated by the religious people. And thank God you're not going to fit in the religious assemblies, and thank God for that. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see intense hatred. And we've seen that manifest many times, and it's going to just intensify. And the children of God need to know that we are on a collision course with the world, and they hate us.
Yeah.
It's just not dislike, it's hatred, and a very intense one at that. Now, let's read John 8, and let's read verses 44 and verse 45. And here Jesus gives it back to him a little bit. Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, ye believe me not. I want to read something from Lightfoot's commentary on the New Testament from the Talmud and the Hebraica. And this was written in the 1600s. It's another classic work.
This sounds like something new for us.
Well, I don't think we've used this on
I don't think so either.
The EOC. And yeah, it's a dandy. And this is Lightfoot's comment, and it's just so straight to the point. But today, people are afraid to say it for fear of the Jews. Because if you identify, and a Jewish person, they're just like everyone else. A lot of them, they don't really know or even believe what their church teaches.
And that's the point. I've thought about that, because a lot of times if we do bring up certain people of different beliefs, we're not attacking those people.
No.
It's their leadership that has deceived them, and for whatever reason, they're just willing to believe what they've been told and not look into it themselves. But it's never about, because I've got friends who are Catholics, I got friends who are Jewish, and I love them.
Yeah.
So but it's about the system that has got them enslaved. That's what we're always talking about when we mention that.
And a lot of the Jews are just like the Catholics in not really knowing what their church teaches. A lot of dispensationalists are like that.
Yeah.
They don't realize what the people that they're following really believe. And just like a Catholic person, it's hard to find a Catholic believes what the Catholic Church teaches. I had one not long ago. I said, "You really believe the Pope's infallible?" Nah, we don't believe that. I mean, that's silly. But, this is what they teach.
Yeah.
And this should make people think that, among many things, why Catholicism and Judaism are bad. But this is what Lightfoot said. He said, from this whole period, meaning this whole encounter we see here in John 7 and 8, from this whole period, it is manifest that the whole tendency of our Savior's discourse is to shew the Jews that they are the seed of that serpent that was to bruise the heel of the Messiah. Or else, what could that mean? In verse 44, year of your father, the devil. And this is speaking of a spiritual fatherhood. We are the sons of God by adoption. And that means when we became to them that believed on him, he gave power to become the sons of God, John 1:12. Doesn't have anything to do with their genetics. And in the same way, being a son of the devil of that seed, it's a spiritual seed. It isn't like some try to make it a serpent seed doctrine, which is really off the chart wackadoodle. But of all the religions, and one of the biggest differences between Islam and Judaism is that Islam has a much higher opinion of Jesus than Judaism does. Yeah. In Islam, they don't go far enough, because they do not believe that Jesus was the Son of God. But Muslims will honor Jesus as a good man and as a prophet. And the Jews in the Talmud, they say that he was a bastard, a magician, that he's in hell, boiling in hot excrement, and it's other things that I wouldn't even want to repeat. It's horrific.
Yeah.
And they are the ones that confronted Jesus, had him put to death. And of all the spiritual teachings, this is the most toxic. And from ministering to people, I can attest that this is the fact. This is the direct energizing of Satan, his attack on the Son of God, lifting up the things of men over the sons of God. And this element through Judaism, and how ironic is it that here in the last days, in the great apostasy, people are taking the teachings of Christ-rejecting rabbis and lifting it up as the greatest thing since peanut butter and jelly. This is all over, and I'm not telling anyone anything they don't know. It's all over everywhere. It's spread through the Messianic Hebrew root, the dispensationalist. It's everywhere. And this is one of the great, the biggest reason we're in the mess we are. Now, in Revelation 2:9, and this is the doctrine of Christ also. This is the teaching of the risen Lord. In Revelation 2:9, I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich. And I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. And I want to read Adam Clark's comment on that. And it's just straight to the point. And that's what we're being. We're just being straight to the point. We're saying what the Bible clearly says. But today, you can't do that for fear of the church system. Because, and everything, it's politically correct. They'll tell you what you can say, what you can't. This is Adam Clark's comment. He said there were persons there who professed Judaism and had a synagogue in the place and professed to worship the true God. But they had no genuine religion, and they served the devil rather than God. What a statement. And there are people that are attending churches professing Christianity, and they are serving the devil and not God. It's scary. But whenever you take the things of men over the things of God, this is the direct agency of Satan, and we have to see it for what it is. It's not very pretty, but we have to see it what it is. He goes on to say, they applied a sacred name to an unholy thing, and this is one meaning of the word blasphemy in this book. And people need to understand, and understand clearly, that people in Judaism, they're going to be lost without Christ. We need to love them and give them Jesus. But in no way are we to take of the things that Christ-rejecting rabbis teach and try to mix that with the Scripture. That is trying to mix the Spirit of God with the Spirit of Antichrist, and that's not what you want to do.
That's why I'm always so wary of even doing anything that seems Jewish. As far as even if it would be a nice thing to do or a fun thing to do, it's just I'm just wary of it all, you know.
And anymore, so many people, they think because we will obey the Sabbath and we'll honor the feasts that we're in the Hebrew root movement. Anyone that really knows us knows that's the farthest thing in the world from what we are. But I know what you mean. I really agree with you. Revelation 3:9, another DLC. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan. Revelation 2:9 and 3:9, Jesus mentions it twice in the letters. But I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. I'll read John Gill's comment on that. And, you know, it's so refreshing. You read these old guys, and they just believed it and like it was. And they didn't try to, hide anything and not being hateful, but we need the truth. And John Gill said, which may be understood either of the papist, the followers of the man of sin, whose coming was after the working of Satan, and whose doctrines are the doctrines of devils, many of whom will now be converted and brought to the true church, or rather of the Jews, who had and have and will have till this time their synagogues for religious worship in their way. But they are no other than the synagogue of Satan. The men that assemble in them are of their fathers the devil, and do his works, and will do them, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. They are Jews by name and nation. They are not Jews outwardly, but inwardly and spiritually. They are Jews outwardly, but not inwardly and spiritually. And he refers to Romans 2:28 and 29, which tells what the true Jew is. It's one inward, not outward. And this is something that, to understand the working of Satan, we have to understand this, because this is still Satan's biggest tool that he's using. And he's using it with great craftiness to destroy the church, to take people away from the things of God to the things of man. And we have to, you can't go halfway here. You're either with Christ or you're against him, like Jesus said himself. We have to totally repent, renounce, break soul ties with these doctrines of devils, whether it's a church or a teacher. We need to repent and renounce and break soul ties with this, and only yoke ourselves to the yoke of Christ and learn of him.
Amen.
Now, we'll go on just a little bit in John 8, and we'll look at verse 48. Then we'll read my favorite verse here. And I tell you what, it is just something. When you just read these two chapters together, and in John chapter 8 and verse 48, and it says here, Then answered the Jews and said unto him, Say we not well that thou art a Samaritan and hast a devil? Right back in his face again. You know, you're a Samaritan, you got a devil. And in John 8 and 51, he says, Verily, verily, I sing unto you, and this is my favorite verse. Verily, verily, I sing unto you, if a man keep my saying, he shall never see death. Then said the Jews unto him, Now we know that thou hast a devil. It's just amazing. They were in his face. If they could have caught him, they'd have killed him. If they'd have just seen him in his face, tell him and he's a devil. And then, just saying the most vile things about Christ in the Talmud. We have to see this for what it is. This isn't spiritual truth. This is Satan in the face of our Savior, and we have to see it for what it is.
Well, yeah, it even says in verse 59 that they took up stones to cast at him, but Jesus hid himself and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. That's fascinating, too.
It is. And we have to appreciate it and understand the intensity of this hatred. And it was just because of the supernatural protection of the Father that his life was not taken from him. He laid it down.
When we're the remnant in these last days, and we are kind of living from day to day, trying not to get killed, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day about this very scripture right here, and I was just thinking, if we're really the true remnant of God in those last days, and somebody's coming after us, and it's not our time to go, will the power of God do the same thing for us, where we just become invisible so we can get out of there, to live another day, to fight for another day or whatever?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we absolutely are going to have that. And Friday night on the DLC, I'm going to be talking, or not on the DLC, on the Remnant Gathering Friday night, about the Holy War. And in the Holy War, it's the battle that God fights. And the requirement for God fighting in your war is your obedience to the law. And this is where most people that profess Christ are just going to be left out. And it's so important to work our salvation out with fear and trembling in obedience unto him. So important, and just out of love. just letting love fulfill the law in your life and obeying him. And it's such a wonderful thing. Now in Matthew chapter 12, verse 24, but when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of devils. And Jesus knew their thoughts and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation. And every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And Satan is the king of a kingdom. And there are orders of power. There are so many we've talked about. There's the higher order of celestial beings, the cherubim, the seraphim, the Ophanim. There's devils and stoichion in the first heaven. And I even found one the other day that I hadn't found just a couple of weeks ago. It's translated in the book of Proverbs, the horse leech. And it's actually the proper name of a devil in the Hebrew that actually, and it's the stoichion and this horse leech, it can actually attach to a person and it just like sucks the life out of them, just like one of these horse leeches that gets on a horse, it'll kill it. They'll just suck it dry and just kill it. And that's what Satan wants to do. He just wants to kill, steal, and destroy. In verse 31 and 32, and it's just a matter of praying specific prayers. And I pray the word of God, and specific prayers will get specific answers. And then Jesus told them in Matthew chapter 12, wherefore I said unto you, all manner of sin and blasphemy shall be forgiven unto men, but the blasphemy against the Holy Ghost shall not be forgiven unto men. And whosoever speaketh the word against the Son of Man, it shall be forgiven him. But whosoever speaketh against the Holy Ghost, it shall not be forgiven him, neither in this world, neither in the world to come. We just really need to have the fear of God in our life and work out our salvation in fear and trembling. And here's another very clear statement of Christ that is rejected almost universally regarding Satan. And such a serious passage here in the Matthew 12 here. And here in verse 28, Jesus said, but if I cast out devils by the Spirit of God, then the kingdom of God is come unto you. Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house? And Jesus bound the strong man in his earthly ministry, cast him out at the cross. And today, and we as believers, by our faith in the cross, we can bind that strong man in our life. But you tell people today, your average church person, that Satan's bound, you'll get back a cliche and a giggle. They'll say, he's bound to get you, you know, and they got a lot of cliches, but not many scriptures, you know, and it's just such deception. And I say that mockingly, you know, and Elijah, he mocked the prophets of Baal. It's disgusting and it's heartbreaking. And there's so many people, and a lot of people, I know they're just not going to get it. And you don't even need to waste your breath on them. And to do so would just be to throw your pearls before swine. But the Spirit of God will let you know when there's a desire there to know and learn truth. And it's just such a serious thing. But in Revelation chapter 20, in verse 2 and 3, and this is wherein we did 2 DOCs on the millennial reign.
Yeah.
And Revelation chapter 20, verse 2 and 3. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years. And at the cross he was bound, and he was even bound before the cross and Jesus' earthly ministry. And in verse 3, and that part of that, and to be bound, is just like there was a woman with an issue of blood that was bound for Satan for several years, it says in Luke, and she was crippled and bent over. But She
Same
couldn't.
word. Was it the same word used?
Yeah, same word, exact word. And that woman, that helps us to understand to be bound means you have restrictions on you. That woman was crippled. She was restricted. She could not function at full capacity, but yet she was out walking around. It didn't mean she couldn't do anything. And that's
Well,
what it means with Satan. He's limited in certain ways.
yeah, that's what I was going to say, because this verse 3, and this is where a lot of people get a lot of hang-ups, in this verse 3 here.
Yeah. And it says, and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up, set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. And after that, he must be loosed for a little season. And we see that little season in the book of Revelation. It's called 42 months, 1,260 days, a time and a half time. And this will be when he will be able to enter into flesh again. And it says he will deceive the nations and gather them under the battle of Armageddon.
But a lot of people say, well, he's deceiving people right now, so he must not be bound.
He sure is. And there's no doubt about that. But they don't understand the completely new level it's going to.
And it's like you said a little bit ago. I mean, he's got generals, sergeants. He's got people. Even if Satan himself is bound up right now and he's not doing much, everybody's got their marching orders under him, and they've got their areas there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And in verse 7 and 8, and when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison and go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And he will gather them unto Armageddon. And there's other scriptures talk about that. They're going to, the Bible talks about the three unclean spirits like frogs that go forth to gather the kings into the great battle of the day of God Almighty. And, it's right upon us. One other aspect here that we want to talk about, we would be remiss if we did not talk about the role of Satan as the tempter. And we did, I think, in season 1, about 4 shows on this passage in Matthew chapter 4, beginning in verse 1. Then Jesus was led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward and hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, command that these stones be made bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. And Jesus here is quoting Deuteronomy to the devil. Then the devil, so the Old Testament must not be that bad if Jesus quoted it to Satan.
That's all he was ever quoting.
I think I might do that too. And you can look these up. Deuteronomy 6:13, 6:16, and 8:3 are the 3 passages from Deuteronomy that Jesus quoted. But then the devil taketh him up into the holy city and setteth him on a pinnacle of the temple. And he saith unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down, for it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. Jesus said unto him, It is written, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Take a little Deuteronomy there, Satan. Again, the devil taketh him into an exceeding high mountain, and sheweth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them. And he saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In season 1, we did, I think, probably 4 teachings on this passage to understand the full aspect of the temptations and how Satan works. And in one of the biggest things we need to understand is in 1 Corinthians chapter 10 and verse 13, There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that you're able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Everyone that falls to temptation fails to look for that way of escape. And there's always a way of escape that we can elude the tempter, but we're going to have to look for it, or he will get the upper hand. But there's always a way of escape. That is, if the Father would allow, Satan could just physically kill us. He is a much more powerful, there's fallen powers that could kill human beings in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But the Father does not allow that. And if we are in Christ, there is no enchantment against Israel. If we keep our faith in the cross that cursed the seraphim, our victory is there. There's no enchantment against Israel. And let's read the text. You referred to this earlier, and it talks about in Hebrews chapter 4, and it talks about the role of Jesus in getting victory by being tempted. And this what has made our way to be able to come into the presence of God in the third heaven. For we have not, in Hebrews 4:15, for we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. There's no way that we've been tempted that Jesus did not endure and overcome, and he did not sin. That's why we can overcome, because we have a great high priest that did, and he has compassion. Jesus isn't mad at us because we're human. He knows very well how human we are. But Jesus gets mad at us when we set our wills against his. That's when the problem comes in. Yeah. Let us therefore, and that's referring back to, because Jesus understands how we're tempted. Therefore, let us therefore come boldly under the throne of grace. It's not the throne of law we come to, because none of us could come, but it's the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. We have that invitation from our great high priest, because he was tempted, he overcome. He's at the right hand of the Father, and he invites us all to come to that throne of grace. And he understands how we fail when we don't even mean to fail. He understands that. And he invites us still to the throne of grace because of him. His grace, his blood makes us worthy. Worthy is the Lamb. And when our faith is in him and his sin covers our blood, that makes us worthy also.
Man.
Let's look at Colossians chapter 2. And this is a great text that speaks about the victory of Christ on the cross when the seraphim was cursed. And in Colossians chapter 2, verse 14, blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us. And every time sin is a transgression of the law, and every time we've all lied or stealed, there's ordinances against us, and we're going to have to deal with them. Mm-hmm. Which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross, and having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a shew of them openly, triumphing over them in it. He's got a victory. He's triumphed. He has just openly throttled these dark powers. And in him, we can be totally secure and immune to these assaults of the evil one. Not that we can't feel them, not that we, if we become lackadaisical, that we can't have our clock cleaned, but when we are vigilant and our faith is in the cross, there is no enchantment against Israel. And Luke chapter 10, and this is another great text that, and of course, they're all great, aren't they? But boy, this is
I knew that was the next words out of your mouth.
I just love them, Jimmy. I just can't, they're all so good. And boy, this one is good. This is good. Now, and the next one I read, it'll be good too, but boy, this is good. Luke chapter 10, verse 17 is talking about the 70. We talked about this also in a DLC before. And the 70 returned again with joy, saying, Lord, even the devils are subject unto us through thy name. And he said unto them, I beheld Satan as lightning fall from heaven. Behold, I give unto you power to tread on serpents and scorpions. Look at Revelation chapter 9, what comes out of the abyss. It said they had stings like scorpions, and I want to be able to stomp them.
Yeah.
And over all the power of the enemy, and nothing shall by any means hurt you. Now, I want to read a commentary by H.A.W. Meyer, and I think we read 2 or 3 that really nailed this passage and understood it. This is another one most people are going to miss, but he really gets it. He says, this, your victorious agency against Satan, whose servants the demons are, was not hidden from me. I beheld at that time in the spirit Satan fallen like a lightning flash from heaven. And as the 70 went out casting out devils, literally Satan was pulled down to the first heaven. And when we put forth the word of God to see people saved, we literally dethrone the fallen powers in our area, and they will get irritated. I then perceived the swift overthrow of Satan from his lofty power in so lively a manner that it presented itself to me in my inward perception as if he were like a flash of lightning. That's exactly what was going on there. It's not talking about something that happened in the past or something that will happen in the future. He beheld right then, as the 70 come back, he saw while they were ministering Satan pulled down because his army was getting a little thumping. And we'll read one more text here and we'll close out. We'll read Matthew 25 and 41. And the text says here, then shall he say also unto them on the left hand, depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. And Satan is the one that hell was prepared for, and all the fallen angels. He doesn't want mankind to go there. We don't have to go there. If we will just repent of our sin and place our faith in the death of Christ upon the cross as payment for our sin debt, we do not have to go there. And then the marvelous, we just did 3 lessons on the DOC about justification, rebirth, and sanctification. Then your walk begins, and all things will become new. Hell is for the devil. It is not his will that any should perish, but that all should receive the saving gospel.
With all of my